Yesterday, I made a video where I called out all the Conservative MPs from Alberta who voted for the Liberal motion to reaffirm support for the UN's Paris Agreement on climate change. And just let me read you the motion so you fully understand how awful it is and why I think the Conservatives should have at the very least abstained completely from the vote and at best stood up, did the right thing, and voted no like Cheryl Gallant did. The motion reads, that in the opinion of the House, climate change is a global problem that requires a global solution, and that despite the withdrawal of the United States from the Paris Agreement, Canada remained committed to the implementation of the agreement as it is in the best interest of all Canadians. You see, that last line there is the worst part, because how the Liberals are implementing the Paris Agreement is with their carbon tax. It's how they justify their tax on us. And the Conservatives just voted for a motion that, whether they like to admit it or not, strongly implies that a carbon tax is in the country's best interest. What do you think? Are we all going to die in some sort of climate inferno if we don't stay in this Paris Agreement? Now, I know. Don't bother telling me. I know the Conservatives are against a carbon tax, and I know this motion was non-binding and symbolic, which is exactly why they should have voted against it on principle, because Conservative principles still matter to some of us. It's why we vote Conservative. You see, the Liberals set a trap for the Conservatives. They were completely set up. I get it. But they did have a choice. They could do the easy thing, or they could do the right thing. They could vote to please a media that hates them, or they could vote to keep their voters happy. And they didn't choose their voters. We aren't happy. Conservative voters are angry all over the country, and that's because Conservative MPs from all over the country have bitterly disappointed them. And I know my last video was pretty Alberta-centric, but you know me, I'm Alberta-centric. Unlike our friends in Saskatchewan, I don't have a provincial Conservative firewall government in between my family's wallet and these greedy federal Liberals. I have Rachel Notley, who's in some sort of race with Justin Trudeau to see who can make me poorer faster, and they're using this Paris Agreement as their excuse to tax me and everyone else in my province into the poorhouse. We should be a warning to the other provinces. Other places are just as hard hit by the Liberals' crazy climate over jobs ideas. Fort St. John in northern BC just wants to frack for gas and drill and export LNG. They just want to work, and they're going to be hard hit and crushed under a Liberal carbon tax and the Liberals' refusal to approve LNG projects. Guess what, Fort St. John? Your Conservative MP, a man I like very much, Bob Zimmer, just voted to implement the Paris Agreement. He backstabbed you. And what about Saskatchewan? Brad Wall and the Saskatchewan Party are ready to throw everything they've got at the federal Liberals to stop their imposition of the carbon tax on their province. The Conservative MP for Saskatoon Grasswood, Kevin Waugh, well, he just voted to affirm the implementation of the Paris Agreement in spite of Brad Wall. He backstabbed you. And if you think for a second any other leader of the Conservative Party would have done anything any differently, think again. Lisa Raitt, Michael Chong, of course, Michael Chong, Kelly Leach, all the other leadership candidates who were present in the House that day betrayed you with their vote. They all backstabbed you. Look, I know the Conservative Party gets dragged left a lot because that's where their critics are. In the media, on social media, in the House of Commons. They get their gut checks from the left, and so they get pulled left on these issues. That's what happens when they aren't hearing from us, mainstream, normal Conservatives, their supporters, their voters, their donors, their volunteers. They need to hear these things from us especially, because that's how we drag them back right again. We don't want to ignore these issues and end up with another Alison Redford on our hands with some sort of unrecognizable Frankenstein Conservative Party of unprincipled Liberals and confused and scared Conservatives because we never held them to account. We can't let the Conservatives get off the hook for backstabbing us because they play on our team. For the Rebel.media, I'm Sheila Gunn-Reid. Until the Conservative Party of Canada renounces its support for the UN's Paris Agreement on global warming, they will not get any more of my donations or my volunteer time. And I'm generous and a hard worker. Sign the pledge today at backstabbers.ca.